Okay, good day to our listeners. I am Kylie Tan, your host for the podcast called Ready, Set, Lockdown. Today we have a bunch of guest speakers to discuss the lockdown in relation to students' mental health and education. So here we have Mark Duanya, Paulo Singson, Kizzy Sol, Yancy Tuazon, Angelo Yomoto, Tristan Villanueva, Cyril Telesforo, Benson Yang, and yours truly. To start the episode, I want to hear your thoughts on if you think the current online system has been effective for the students to have a safe space for education while being able to maintain optimal learning conditions. If yes, why? If no, why not? And can you suggest other methods of learning that would be able to maintain such conditions? Maybe we could start with Mark.
Hi guys, my name is Mark Wasitwanya and I'm ID 120. I'm currently taking up BS in Civil Engineering. So thank you for that question, Kylie. For me, it was somewhat effective naman. So far here in DLSU, my professors always made sure that we had safe spaces, especially now that since we're in distance learning. We were always given time to complete assignments on our own and we always had minimal pressure, except for the deadlines and quizzes. So, due to this, we were able to maintain optimal learning conditions. Since, as I have mentioned earlier, the learning is at our own pace and like yung mental health namin yung lagi na prioritize. So, don't get me wrong, online learning is very far from being good. But with the help of our professors and classmates, I think that we can make it work naman.
Well, I'm Benson Yang, no? ID 120, taking up BS Mechanical Engineering. I agree with Mark that it is somewhat effective. Nga. Strategies being utilized by professors in De La Salle University have been very effective, and it does give a safe space for students to slowly learn. Some professors do give a considerable amount of time for us to do the requirements for distance learning in times of these. Especially, some professors have a flexible consultation period, and I personally know a professor who opened a Zoom meeting at 11 p.m. to help with the problems of my friend. That is really helpful and gives a sense of peace for us students that there are professors like that.
Thank you for that, Mark and Benson. I agree that online learning is only somewhat effective, even with the Kahoot or other activities that our professors prepare for us. Sometimes it just doesn't feel enough. And although online learning is far from being good for us students, our professors have definitely made it more interesting and easier for us to learn the different lessons that we have. So, for our next question, despite the current online education setting, what activities would you recommend for students to be able to maintain their mental health? Maybe we could start with Angelo.
Hi, I'm Angelo Yumoto. I'm ID 120 and taking up civil engineering. So, COVID-19 has shredded us students physically, mentally, and emotionally. And despite the current situation, there are things we can do to be able to overcome fear, anxiety, boredom, and maintain our mental health. The best thing I can recommend to divert our attention from negativity is engaging yourself in learning new skills and improving on things you're interested in, like learning new sports, music, craft, and games. You can also use this time to work out, do yoga, or practice meditation. This lockdown also gave us the opportunity to build strong bonds with our family.
Hello guys, I'm Cyril Telesforo, taking up BS Industrial Engineering Class 120. So just to add na lang to what Angelo said, my main recommendation to my fellow students is to avoid or at least minimize the use of social media. Even though social media has gotten a reputation for being bad, we can't deny the fact that it can also be useful. So, one instance of the use of social media is its effective communication. For example, it can bring you closer to your friends or acquaintances that you haven't spoken to in a long time, right? However, several studies have found a strong connection between heavy social media usage can increase the risk of depression, anxiety, which can lead to self-harm and even suicide. So, ano nga ba yung mga negative effect ng social media? Magpo-point out lang ako ng isang effects, no? And it can promote lack of self-confidence. Kasi in social media, most of the time, makikita mo yung mga posts of your friends about their life, And hindi mo maiiwasan na hindi mo mai-compare yung life mo sa kanila. And most of the time, this can cause insecurities.
I agree. So this pandemic has definitely had a negative impact on our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Although not everyone has the luxury of comfortably staying in their own homes and looking for things to do, the best thing we could definitely recommend is to try to use this time to find yourself. Try new things out, do things you were interested in that you never thought of doing, and try to focus on yourself a little bit more. And we could only hope for the best, especially as the situation does not seem to get better anytime soon. I do want to ask you guys if you think that the online class is an effective way to learn during the pandemic and why. Maybe we could start with Benson.
Well, online classes have been a very controversial topic among students in the Philippines and in other countries. I figure that it really depends on the learner and how it copes with the online classes because this is the only time that technology is heavily used in the education system. As we are the test subject of this matter, this new way of learning definitely opens new avenues for improvement that may be better utilized by future generations. I agree that online learning is an effective way to learn during this pandemic, as a lot of students who are 18 and below are unable to receive their vaccines yet. Without their vaccines, the risk of transmission is really high and very dangerous for them. For older students, I have mixed feelings towards it, especially some requiring hands-on application for them to learn properly and be able to contribute to the society.
Hi, I am Jerson Villanueva, ID 120, taking up BS Civil Engineering. So for me, it contradicts what Benson said because for me, online classes is not an effective way to learn during this pandemic because personally, when I listen to my online classes, I only remember less than 50% of what the teacher is teaching. Even if I listen carefully because in an online classroom setting, my focus is spread out. Because sometimes my parents will even ask me to do something. Also, based on my experience, it is also hard to ask questions in online classes and some activities needs hands-on learning and we cannot use the actual equipment.
Grabe, we're only halfway through this episode and the conversations that are going on are getting spicy. We're having some disagreements and agreements on some of the topics. So before we continue, I would just like to ask, how are you guys doing? How are you guys personally affected by the pandemic? Mark, maybe we could start with you.
Personally, the pandemic, yeah, wala naman, not gonna lie, it's like everything's normal lang naman, pero yung difference lang talaga is walang masyadong lumalabas. And, ayun, yung online learning talaga is, for me, somewhat effective lang talaga siya. And I think I can pass this on to Benson.
Well, for me, no. Uh, since I'm a very outgoing person, no, madalas kami lumalabas, I feel like natrap na kami sa loob because of this pandemic. So, it does affect us naman. How about you, Jerson?
For me, of course, naapektuhan talaga yung buhay natin kasi lahat naman tayo hindi tayo makalabas sa bahay natin. And syempre, nami-miss din natin makipag umalis o gumala kasama yung mga friends ganun. Pero hindi naman buti na lang hindi naman kami natamaan pa ng COVID. Na naman. How about you, Paulo?
Ayun, hi guys. So, I'm Paolo from taking up Industrial Engineering, ID 120. So, for me, parang same lang din naman na tawag dito, na parang nasa bahay lang, wala masyadong ginagawa. Yun lang yung pinaka-difference. Pero, yun, mahirap nga ang learning, pero it is what it is. So, we just have to adjust to our situation right now. So, what about you, Cyril?
For me, somehow affected din ako. And kasi yung education nga naging online, so medyo nag-a-adjust pa. And yung social life medyo syempre hindi makalabas. So affected din somehow.
Okay, so thank you for that. Okay, so let's continue. So the next question we have for you guys is, in what way do you guys think that the university could help the students to improve their mental health? Maybe we could start with Angela for this.
Mental health is a growing concern at universities. Many students struggle to keep up with their classes while handling personal mental health conditions. One thing that universities should do is to let the students be aware of the resources available to them and let them feel comfortable using those resources. They should also invest and expand these counseling services because some students who need help may feel reluctant or unsure of how to seek it out. When they do, they face long wait times. Some schools provide a fixed number of counseling sessions regardless of students' needs. Studying in an online setting has been a challenge for a lot of students and sometimes stress from classes can become too much to manage. Universities should design their courses that push learners without overwhelming them, like manageable schedules and course loads.
So, hello, I'm Curly Ansol, ABS Biomed student ID 120. So, to add up lang to what Angelo said, universities can help students assess their strengths and overall resilience. By empowering students with increased self-knowledge, they can more identify problems early and access supportive resources. Aside from that, universities could create processes and tools for sa mga students to at least improve their ability na i-manage ang stress. For example, yung campus pwede silang gumawa ng activity that could help students identify when and where to reach out or to get help with their specific concerns. Lastly, universities can also establish peer support groups for students with various mental health needs.
Thank you for that, Angelo and Chrissy. I definitely agree with your sentiments. Unfortunately, not all universities create projects that would help students cope during the pandemic. I'm thankful that the different organizations in the SAL are slowly trying to create more projects that target students who are struggling or that need some mental boost. Also, on a serious note, if any of you viewers need someone to talk to, LaSalle offers various counseling services, and I'm sure they'd love to talk to you. And if you're afraid to talk to them, talk to your friends or family about it. Please don't forget that you are not alone. So, moving on for the next question, do you guys see the resumption of hybrid face-to-face learning as an ideal way to continue education? Or should we maintain the system that we currently have? So, maybe we could start with Paolo right now, and then Cyril gonna answer this question as well.
Yeah, so with regards to the resumption of face-to-face learning, yes, I do think that resuming face-to-face classes is ideal, and I would even say that it's necessary in order to maintain a decent standard of education in our country. As of now, there are only 4 countries in the world that have not resumed physical classes, of which it includes our country, the Philippines. Although cases of COVID are still rampant in our country, having a limited and a hybrid form of physical classes would be sufficient enough to ensure safety while also being able to provide proper education for our youth. In addition, further vaccination would also be able to provide a higher degree of safety, not only for the students, but also for the professors and everyone else involved.
Okay, for me, I think for now ito lang yung mapo-point out ko na disadvantage ng online class, and that is face-to-face classes are at set times. So what do I mean about this? Syempre, classes is not recorded. So for example, you miss your 9 to 11 class or absent ka for that day. In face-to-face classes, kasi nga no recordings, so you have nothing that you can watch para makakatch up ka sa lessons, no? So, and syempre, I think the safety is it take into consideration on opening face-to-face classes kasi nga nasa Manila tayo. And I think ito lang yung take ko, no, about this topic.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm sure all our listeners miss going back to face-to-face classes. I mean, I'm sure we do too. Face-to-face classes or at least hybrid classes are definitely more ideal than just online classes as we students get to learn more. But before we could even consider going back to face-to-face classes or even hybrid classes, we have to make sure it'll be safe for everyone, not only for us students, but also for the different staffs or the different professors in the university. So for the next question, in your opinion, how did the hard lockdown affect the students and professors? Paulo?
Yeah, so as a student myself, the lockdowns were really a big adjustment that I had no choice but to participate in. And I think as for the professors, it seems as though they're also having a hard time, especially because they're not used to teaching in a purely online setting. I understand that it's for the greater good, the lockdown, and for everyone's safety. However, it seems as though they have been implementing the lockdowns arbitrarily and without any proper planning. To me, that kind of inefficiency and lack of proper planning is actually what's causing the increase in cases and ultimately the increase of lockdowns. So yun lang, I hope that they're able to resolve this because there are many whose mental health are suffering since the onset of the lockdown implementation.
So, for me naman, the lockdown causes major interruption in students' learning. Some students do not have access to resources and materials with which to learn. There is a subsequent detrimental effect on both academic attainment and well-being. Many students are not well equipped with a high internet connection that is required for online learning. At the start of lockdown, most teachers were focusing on learning how to conduct a productive class in this new online environment of remote teaching. However, some teachers are not fond of using technology. Masanay sila sa traditional way of teaching pero teacher, teacher skills do not cater to this online teaching environment kasi they are not trained for these kinds of situations. The sudden and anticipated switch from face-to-face to online education hardly left them with adequate time to prepare for an alternative mode of teaching.
I definitely agree with your sentiments, and I do believe that with the upcoming elections happening soon, that hopefully better implementations of different protocols would benefit all of us students and professors. And maybe during the term break, the professors would also be able to adjust a little bit more in terms of how they would teach during this online setting. So, for the last question, in your opinion, how did students adapt to studying in an online setting? Maybe we could start with Yancy.
Hi, I'm Yancy, batch ID 120, taking up BS Civil Engineering. So now with online learning being the current norm, there's a high degree of adjustment, especially when we ourselves are used to face-to-face learning. And with that level of adjustment for a new way of learning, we should be able to adapt to the hardships and rise above. Even if it seems difficult, we should be able to have good time management and work ethics as we would also do when working in real life. Furthermore, the student must be able to learn by themselves with the online modules and recordings that are provided by the professor. And another area I do find myself having a hard time with is socializing. With the online setting, I found it difficult with having to talk to others. This is an area I should soon be able to adapt to the setting and improve my communication skills despite the challenges.
For me, as a student, it's really hard to adapt to studying in an online setting, but I think proper time management is an effective way to adapt to online classes. Like me, I really manage my time very wisely every day, and I always list down all the things that I need to do in a day. Basically, I make my daily studying routine so I can be more productive. For me, it is also effective to self-study, like watching the recorded lectures or watch some YouTube vids when I don't understand the discussion. Sometimes I also ask questions in class because I think it's better than having an unclear question in my mind.
Well, students have a really different views and opinions on what approach should they take to properly learn during the online class setting. I personally rewatch lecture recordings as distractions in our homes are unavoidable. I find studying with friends such as group discussion is an effective way to learn from each other as well share their experience with you. Another is to ask questions directly to your professors to clarify certain information. In It does not help when one is confused, so it is better to ask than be shy.
Thank you to our speakers for sharing their sentiments on this topic for this episode. I definitely learned a lot and have a lot to think about when thinking about these topics, as it definitely depends on your experience with the whole pandemic and how you feel about mental health and online setting or online classes. So that brings us to the end of our episode today. We hope that you learned something from this episode, and we hope to see you in our next. So I'm Kylie Tan, and this is Ready Set Lockdown, and we'll see you on our next episode.